Two first-century Christians are spoken of as being sealed by means of Holy Spirit, which is an advance token of their heavenly inheritance. F1. 13, 14. 4. 30. The seal signifies their being God's possession to Co. 1. 21, 22 and shows that they are truly in line for heavenly life. The Book of Revelation shows the number finally sealed to be 144,000. Re 7. 2-4. 9. 4. The Bible speaks of something that is closed, hidden, or secret as being sealed. Prophetic messages were sealed during the time they were not understood. Dar 12. 4, 9. Re 5. 1. 22. 10. Compare Isla 8. 16. 29. 11. And Jehovah is said to put a seal around stars, evidently meaning that he hides them from view by means of clouds. Job 9. 7. Sealskin. There is uncertainty as to the particular kind of skin referred to as tachash. This Hebrew word is used in describing the outer cover of the tabernacle or textoi acute muritra longo. See Monster 884 who considered the Septuagint reading to be simply conjecture, a rendering having the support neither of etymology nor of related languages. He understood tachash to mean either the seal or the badger, basing his conclusions on the context, the authority of the Talmudists, a comparison of the Hebrew word with similar words in other languages, and Hebrew etymology. Bible translators have variously rendered wrote tachash deka shimmers badger's skin skj, goat skin srs, porpoise skin at, seal skin as, leather mo, fine leather jb, violet skin dye, and drahash leather nw, x25. 5, ftn, but sealskins in main text. The rendering badger's skin is not generally favored by scholars, since it is thought unlikely that the Israelites would have been able to procure enough badger skins, either in Egypt or in the wilderness, for covering the tabernacle. There are also scholars who consider neither badger's skin nor sealskin nor porpoise skin to be correct, in view of the fact that badgers, seals, porpoises or dolphins, dugongs, and similar creatures were evidently unclean for food. Lure 11. 12, 27. They therefore find it hard to conceive that the skin of an unclean animal would have been used for something so sacred as the construction of the tabernacle and as a protective covering for the furnishings and utensils of the sanctuary. Those taking this view suggest that tachash may designate the skin of a clean animal, possibly of a kind of antelope, sheep, or goat. Usable, though seal classed as unclean. The fact that seals were evidently unclean for food would not necessarily rule out using their skins as a covering for the tabernacle. For instance, whereas the lion and the eagle were unclean. 11. 13, 27. The heavenly cherubs seen by Ezekiel in vision were depicted with 4 faces, including that of a lion and of an eagle. As 1. 5, 10. 10. 14 also. The copper carriages that Solomon made for temple use were adorned with representations of lions, and this undoubtedly according to the plans given to David by divine inspiration. 1 Kai 7. 27-29. 1 Ch 28. 11-19. The Israelites used unclean animals, such as asses, for mounts, it even being foretold that the Messiah would ride into Jerusalem upon an ass. Zech 9. 9. Mount 21. 4, 5. Although John the Baptizer had a most sacred commission to go in advance before Jehovah to make his ways ready, he wore clothing made from the hair of an unclean animal. Boo 1. 76. Mount 3. 4. Lure 11. For all of this tends to indicate that the distinction between clean and unclean was simply dietary, though at times it was also used with reference to sacrifice, and did not require that the Israelites regard unclean animals with general abhorrence. Lure 11. 46, 47. Also, these, like the clean animals, were created by God and were therefore good, not loathsome in themselves. Ge 1. 21, 25. How obtainable by Israelites? If the tachash of the Bible does designate a kind of seal, then a question may arise as to how it was possible for the Israelites to obtain sealskins. While seals are generally associated with Arctic and Antarctic regions, some seals favor warmer climates. Today a few monk seals still inhabit part of the Mediterranean Sea, as well as other warmer waters. Over the centuries man has greatly reduced the number of seals, and in Bible times these animals may have been abundant in the Mediterranean and in the Red Sea. As late as 1832 an English edition of Carmet's Dictionary of the Holy Bible p. 139 observed, "On many of the small islands of the Red Sea, around the peninsula of Sinai, are found seals." See also The Tabernacle's Typical Teaching, by A. J. Pollock, London, p. 47. The ancient Egyptians engaged in commerce on the Red Sea and, of course, received goods from many of the Mediterranean regions. So the Egyptians would have had access to sealskins. Hence, O textoi acute miritra longo, Secretaries Inclon 885 certain kind of weather prevails. A suitable or appointed time for something. As the earth revolves around the sun, the tilt of the earth's axis at an angle to the plane of the ecliptic produces a cycle of weather seasons. As markers of the passing of time, the heavenly bodies serve as indicators of seasons. G. 1. 14 Genesis 8. 22 says that the earth's seasons will never cease. For a correlation of the months of the Jewish and Gregorian calendars and the festival, weather, and agricultural seasons, see calendar. Closely connected with the agricultural seasons were the annual festival seasons, when the festivals established by the Mosaic law were celebrated. 1 Ch 23. 31. 2 Ch 31. 3 Hence, when Paul counseled some Jewish Christians who were scrupulously observing days and months and seasons, he meant the festival seasons that were a part of the law, not simply weather or agricultural seasons. 4. 10. Season can therefore refer to a fixed or an appointed time or a period possessed of certain characteristics. Act 3. 19, FTN. Row 8. 18. G 6. 9 In time what constituted healthful teaching and proper conduct were made very clear to Christians. Accordingly, it was the season to be awake. Row 13. 11-14 The times or seasons, or periods when Jehovah's will in certain matters would take place, were of real interest to his worshippers. Act 1. 7, who understood them as they were progressively revealed. 1 Th 5. 1. In regard to the dwelling of nations on the earth, God decreed the appointed times. Act 17. 26. Fixed the epochs of their history, any in that he determined when certain changes should occur, such as when the divinely appointed time came to uproot the Canaanite inhabitants of the promised land. G 15. 13-21. J 25. 8-11. Da 2. 21. 7. 12. See appointed times of the nations. Seat. See judgment seat. See Bas Ba. 1. One of the 6 sons of Cush. Ge 10. 7, 8. 1 Ch 1. 9, 10. 2. A land of Africa. At Isaiah 43. 3 Seba is linked with Egypt and Ethiopia. Cush, in being given as a ransom in place of Jacob. In a similar listing, Isaiah 45. 14 has Sabines in place of Seba, indicating that the people of Seba were called Sabines. These verses suggest that Seba bordered on or was included in Ethiopia. This is supported by Josephus, who says that Saba replied to the city of Merodayarsisi on the Nile and to the large section Isle of Merodayarsisi between the Nile, Blue Nile, and Atbara rivers. Jewish Antiquities, 2, 249x, 2 The reference to these Sabines as tall men is 45. 14 is borne out by Herodotus 3, 20, who speaks of the Ethiopians as the tallest and fairest of all men. See Cush numbers 1 and 2. Merodayarsisi was long an important trading place. Among the distant places mentioned in Psalm 72 in describing the dominion and influence of the one Jehovah would appoint as king, Seba and Sheba are named as places whose kings would present a gift. PS 72. 10. Joe 3. 8. Sabam. Apparently an alternate name for Sibma. New 32. 3, 38. See Sibma. Sekakis middle dot kaka from a root meaning cover. Screen over. A city of Judah in the wilderness. Jos 15. 20, 61 Sekaka is often identified with Kabades Samra, on a hill about 6 kilometers 3.5 MW of the northern part of the Dead Sea. This is in the heart of El Baki Abikali Regania, a barren plateau, in the northern section of the Judean wilderness. Secret. See Sacred Secret. Secretary. Usually an appointed official skilled at writing and keeping records. The Hebrew word for can also be rendered scribe and copyist. At least at times in Israel there was a trusted court official of high rank called the secretary of the king or the secretary. 2 Ch 24. 11. 2 Chi 19. 2 He was not simply a scribe who was employed in making documents, nor was he merely a copyist of the law. JG 5. 14. NE 13. 13. Compare 2 So 8. 15-18. 20. 23-26. See copyist. Scribe. On occasion the secretary of the king o textoi acute miritra longo, sect 886 those used at one time in ancient Egypt. The Egyptian scribe kit was a long, narrow case made out of wood and had a compartment or slots for reed pens. On the outer face, near the top, it had at least one recess for a small cake of dried ink. The scribe could prepare to write by applying the moistened end of his pen to the ink. Inscriptions show that Syrian scribes used a similar scribble kit. Sect. The Greek word sis, from which comes the English word heresy thus translated means choice. 22. 18. Sex or that which is chosen, hence a body of men separating themselves from others and following their own tenets, a sect or party. Thayer's Greek-English Lexicon of the New Testament, 1889, p. 16. This term is applied to the adherents of the two prominent branches of Judaism, the Pharisees and Sadducees. Act 5. 17. 15. 5. 26. 5. Non-Christians also called Christianity a sect or the sect of the Nazarenes, possibly viewing it as a break-off from Judaism. Act 24. 5, 14. 28. 22. The founder of Christianity, Jesus Christ, prayed that unity might prevail among his followers. Jos 17. 21, and the apostles were vitally interested in preserving the oneness of the Christian congregation. 1 Co 1. 10. Jude 17-19 Disunity in belief could give rise to fierce disputing, dissension, and even enmity. Compare Act 23. 7-10. So sects were to be avoided, being among the works of the flesh. 5. 19-21 Christians were warned against becoming promoters of sects or being led astray by false teachers. Act 20. 28. 2T2. 17, 18. 2 PE2. 1 In his letter to Titus, the Apostle Paul directed that, after being admonished twice, the man who continued promoting a sect be rejected, evidently meaning that he be expelled from the congregation. 3. 10 Those who refused to become involved in creating divisions within the congregation or in supporting a particular faction would distinguish themselves by their faithful course and give evidence of having God's approval. This is apparently what Paul meant when telling the Corinthians. There must also be sects among you, that the persons approved may also become manifest among you. 1 Co 11. 19. Sekusku. Apparently the name of a site with a great cistern where Saul inquired as to the whereabouts of David and Samuel. 1 So 19. 21, 22 Seku was near Alma, but its exact location is now unknown. Instead of the proper name Seku, some scholars, following certain Greek and Latin manuscripts, prefer such expressions as the threshing floor on the Behill height. JB, at secundusmiddle.com from Lat. Meaning second. A Thessalonian Christian who accompanied Paul through Macedonia into Asia Minor on the return leg of the Apostles' third missionary journey, probably in the spring of 56 CE. How far Secundus went with Paul is not stated. Act 20. 3-5. Sedition. The Greek word station sis, which basically means standing heb 9. 8 came to have a meaning as standing off or sedition. Mr. 15. 7. Lu 23. 19, 25, int it can also be rendered dissension Act 15. 2, and sometimes it embraces the idea of violence. Act 23. 7, 10. It was a capital offense under Roman law to engage in sedition or to promote or take part in a riot. Thus the city recorder was alerting the riotous mob in Ephesus of their peril when he said, "We are really in danger of being charged with sedition over today's affair, no single cause existing that will permit us to render a reason for this disorderly mob." Act 19. 40 and Tertullus' accusation before Roman governor Felix that Paul was stirring up seditions among all the Jews was a very serious one. If found guilty, Paul would have been punished with death. Act 24. 5. Seed. The Hebrew zera and the Greek sperma, both translated seed, appear many times in the scriptures, with the following uses or applications. Are agricultural and botanical, B physiological, and C figurative for offspring. Agricultural, O textui acute miritra longo, seed 887 numbers 5. 28 A passive form of zamidal.ra appears with zera and is rendered made pregnant with semen nw, sown with seedig, conceive seed kj. Figurative use. In the majority of instances in which the word zera appears in the Bible, it is used with reference to offspring, or posterity. Animal offspring are designated by this term at Genesis 7. 3. Human offspring of Noah are referred to at Genesis 9. 9. Those of the woman Hagar at Genesis 16. 10. God commanded Abram and his natural seed to be circumcised as a sign of the covenant God was making with them. GE 17. 7-11. The Greek word sperma is used in the same applications as the Hebrew zera. Compare Mount 13. 24. 1 Cor 15. 38. Heb 11. 11. Joe 7. 42. Jesus Christ used the related word sporos thingson to symbolize the Word of God. Lu 8. 11. A sacred secret. At the time God judged Adam and Eve, he spoke a prophecy that gave hope to their offspring, saying to the serpent, "I shall put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He will bruise you in the head, and you will bruise him in the heel." GE 3. 15 From the beginning, the identity of the promised seed was a sacred secret of God. This prophetic statement revealed that there would be a deliverer who would destroy the one really represented by the serpent, namely, the great serpent and enemy of God, Satan the devil. Re 12. 9 It also indicated that the devil would have a seed. It would require time for the two seeds to be brought forth and for enmity to develop between them. The seed of the serpent. We note that when the Bible speaks of seed in a symbolic sense, it does not refer to literal children, or offspring, but to those who follow the pattern of their symbolic father, those having his spirit or disposition. Adam and Eve's first son Cain is an example of one of the serpent's offspring. The Apostle John writes enlighteningly on this point. The children of God and the children of the devil are evident by this fact. Everyone who does not carry on righteousness does not originate with God, neither does he who does not love his brother. For this is the message which you have heard from the beginning, that we should have love for one another. Not like Cain, who originated with the wicked one and slaughtered his brother. And for the sake of what did he slaughter him? Because his own works were wicked, but those of his brother were righteous. 1 Joe 3. 10-12. Compare Joe 8. 44. Thus the seed of the serpent throughout the centuries consisted of those who had the spirit of the devil, who hated God and fought God's people, and it included particularly the religious persons who claimed to serve God, but who were actually false, hypocrites. Jesus identified the Jewish religious leaders of his day as a part of the serpent's seed, saying to them, "Serpents, offspring gr. General middle.nema middle.tar, generated ones of vipers, how are you to flee from the judgment of Gehenna?" Mount 23. 33, int. There was a gradual revelation of features of God's secret concerning the promised seed of the woman. The questions to be answered were, would the seed be heavenly or earthly? If spiritual or heavenly, would it nevertheless run an earthly course? Would the seed be one or many? How would it destroy the serpent and liberate mankind? As has already been shown, the serpent to whom Jehovah was directing his words recorded at Genesis 3:15 was not the animal on the ground. Obviously, it could not understand an issue such as was involved here, a challenge of Jehovah's sovereignty. Therefore, as later developments revealed, God was speaking to an intelligent individual, his archenemy Satan the devil. The book of Job enlightens us on this matter, as there we find Satan presenting his accusation against Job's integrity to Jehovah in order to support his challenge against God's sovereignty. Job 1:6-12. 2. 1-5 The father, then, of the seed do textoi acute miritra longo. Seed 888 to Abraham reveals that Abraham would have offspring. It also disclosed that the ancestral line of the prophetically promised seed of deliverance would indeed run an earthly course. One person foretold. In speaking of the offspring of Abraham and others, the Hebrew and Greek terms used are in the singular form, usually referring to such offspring in a collective sense. There seems to be one strong reason why the collective term zera, seed, rather than the strictly plural word ba, sons singular ben, was used so often with respect to Abraham's posterity. The Apostle Paul points to this fact in explaining that when God spoke of the blessings to come through Abraham's seed, he had primary reference to one person, namely, Christ. Paul says, "Now the promises were spoken to Abraham and to his seed. It or, he says, not. And to seeds gr. Sperma as in the case of many such, but as in the case of one. And to your seed gr. Spermati, who is Christ." 3:16, ftn. Some scholars have objected to Paul's statement regarding the singular and plural use of seed. They point out that in Hebrew the word for seed zera, when used for posterity, never changes its form, in this use resembling the English word sheep. Also, the accompanying verbs and adjectives do not in themselves indicate the singularity or plurality intended by the word for seed. While this is so, there is another factor that demonstrates that Paul's explanation was accurate grammatically as well as doctrinally. Explaining this factor, M. Clintock and Strong's Cyclopedia 1894, Volume 9, p. 506 states, "In connection with pronouns, their construction is entirely different from both the preceding, that is, the verbs and adjectives used with the word seed. A singular pronoun used with zera marks an individual, and only one, or one out of many, while a plural pronoun represents all the descendants. This rule is followed invariably by the Septuagint." Peter understood this construction, for we find him inferring a singular seed from General XXI, 17:18, when speaking to native Jews in the city of Jerusalem before Paul's conversion, Acts 3:26, as David had set the example 1,000 years before Sir. LXXI, 17. Additionally, this reference work says, "The distinction made by Paul is not between one seed and another, but between the one seed and the many." And if we consider him quoting the same passage with Peter cited earlier, his argument is fairly sustained by the pronoun his, not their enemies. Seed with a pronoun singular is exactly equivalent to son. Using an English illustration, the expression my offspring could refer to one or to many. But if after such expression the offspring should be referred to as he, it would be apparent that a single child or descendant was